Welcome. This is the Global Summit House Podcast. Catch power interviews and discussions with influential, inspiring, and powerful people. Explore what's possible by tuning into this podcast with our all-new The Writers Project episodes, featuring one of the world's most inspired thinkers and writers. Visit our website at www.globalsummithouse.com.
Hello, my people. Welcome back to another amazing show. We have another fabulous and phenomenal guest with us here today. Today we have with us Verena Conley. She is a writer and educator. Her books deals with everyday life and sensualism, dilemmas, everyday, the dilemmas that, we all toughen out and deal with. She lives currently in Massachusetts with her husband and 2 dogs. Today we're going to be talking about her book, mostly Cree, To Believe in the World, that depicts many images of northern Minnesota, the large wilderness there in northern Minnesota along the Canadian border, and it has a huge dilemma in that book as well that maybe some of you can relate. So without further ado, let's hear for Miss Conley. So Verena, can you go ahead and just tell us a little bit about yourself in your own words?
Well, thank you for having me on the show. So I'd be happy to talk about this book that takes place in northern Minnesota, which is an area that I've known quite well since I lived in Minneapolis for many years, and I also know Wisconsin. I've lived in Madison, so it's an area that's quite dear to me. Specifically, I focus on the geography, on the lay of the land, if you'd like. Though I think it could also be somewhere else. I mean, it could be out here in Maine. It could be out west. It could be anywhere where somebody who is as the main protagonist of the story here, the woman who is a professional woman and who has a sort of secure financial life with a husband and children, and her life is thrown topsy-turvy when she gets they're having a midlife crisis, as many of us do, and this ends in divorce. And so she goes through a major crisis, and she wants to collect herself. And to collect herself, she follows the opportunity she has to go and work for a magazine up north in the summer, and she goes there with her children. So the story is like many stories. A woman is trying to come to terms with her life and pulls herself up and through, and wonders how she can deal and cope suddenly with her life and the children. And she goes to this place up north where she is part of a team that is supposed to write a piece on the Boundary Waters from various aspects, from the aspect of a writer, a scientist, and the photographers involved. And so I described the sort of unexpected encounter that this woman has there, and that really affects her life, and how she is, through the story, which becomes an unforeseen love story of a woman with a much younger man, and how she actually experiences the world in a very different way, and herself in a very different way, and how she is transformed. But not only she is transformed, but also especially her daughter is transformed. So it's a kind of almost a mystic journey, a voyage of somebody of this character, all tied in with the absolutely gorgeous landscape of the north, and the encounter of that city dweller of an area that she really hadn't known, and also of things about herself that she hadn't known. So that's the main story. Then there are secondary plot lines. That, for example, one of the important one is that of the daughter, who is sort of in a rebellious phase, and who meddles in the mother's love affair and involuntarily causes the death of the young man, and who is really shaken by this, and it's kind of an apprenticeship for her too. So it's all about, it has a lot to do with women and how they cope, but it is also, the discovery of the other characters, and the discovery of the surroundings, and everybody all the main characters are being transformed through this kind of chance encounter, if you'd like.
Yeah, this story of transformation is so crucial, because on the surface, when we look at the summary, the first thing that sticks out to us is like, oh, divorce. That's such a huge subject to stick out there. Divorce, and it connected with love, and we look at that, and we begin to like get so separated with those terms. But when we dive deeply into transformation, we can all relate to that, because we all have like had our inner transformations, our own spiritual transformations, and all have grown in all different stages of life and chapters. So uh, so I'm quite sure you can relate in your own life, and so have you had some essentially some connection with one of these characters in some shape or form?
Yes, of course. We all do. I mean, we all write about ourselves. We always write about ourselves, and we always bring our story into it. But it's that, and but it's not my own personal journey at all. I would say that a lot of it comes from other books, and a lot of it comes from movies, for example. And so, it's a combination of all of the stories I've read, of what I have lived, and a sort of weaving together of all that, and also, how your inspiration works, how you. Somebody once asked me, another interviewer asked me how I met the character, the young man, and it was just sort of a fleeting glimpse once of somebody I saw who just stuck in my mind, and so I sort of thought about this character for a long time, and I'm sure that by the time I write about him, he's completely transformed too, and it's no longer the original, the person of the encounter. So I'm not saying that I write myself out of a painful situation. I don't think that produces a very good narrative, but I do think that certainly I've had similar experiences, and and I've had to cope with under similar circumstances, which inflects, guides the narrative. I also have to say that when I discovered, I've always been very close to nature, and you can't be that anymore, because with all the electronic equipment around, it's not good to be so close to nature. But I love nature, and I've discovered the nature of the North when about 20 years ago, and I just absolutely fell in love with it. And I think this whole area of northern Wisconsin or northern Minnesota is just fabulous, and so would be the north of Maine, for example. So this kind of landscape appeals to me, and so I really try to combine the personal story with that landscape and make a very strong case for the setting and for the transformation in the setting. But again, to repeat what I already said, the transformation is that of every character in there. It's not just one person. It's kind of an encounter of many people, and through each other, they're sort of are different. And I think if you read the story, you notice that it's very short in time. So it's vast in space since they go on a trip, and it's during that trip that spoiler alert, that the young man and the young woman come together amorously, erotically. But I think that it's in time, it's a very short period, and so it's a very intense period because she has this, she just sees this guy and she just, is really smitten by him, and then is shaken in her foundations almost, and then they go on this trip together, which only lasts with the whole team, which only lasts about 2-3 days, and so the whole story takes place primarily in about 3 days.
Wow. Well, I find it truly amazing though that that made this connection, with the wilderness and then with placing these characters all together freely with the back doors of the of the wilderness. It is remarkable that that America have these beautiful places like northern Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, and other remote places of the wildernesses where you can essentially go back and connect back to your innocent state, innocent state, and be free. So, did you have that in mind? That just knowing from your own experiences of traveling to these places, that going back into nature is where you can essentially go back and be free. And it seems like there's no rules and there's no routine and
there are rules though, but I wouldn't say free, and I wouldn't say going back to. I think it's somebody who, like many of us, many women who work and are constantly caught up in their work and completely forget about their senses because we're all so glued to it. That's banality. It's very banal what I'm saying, but it's just very true that you're constantly on the cell phone, you're constantly on all these gadgets, and so you don't really allow yourself to think or feel or smell or do anything. And one of the things is that the woman is disconnected from that by the force of things because she doesn't have internet access for the couple of days of their stay, and so she really truly experiences her senses, and she sort of starts to think about her professional life and how she's constantly, like many of us, caught up in professional success, which makes her live in a very sort of lopsided way. And then on top of that, she has this breakdown of her marriage, and the marriage actually breaks up because the husband too is sick of this, and so he wants out because he thinks he has the love of his life, and that leaves her with basically nothing. And so she has to pick herself up, and she does have it through the senses, through she listens to the sound, she has the smell, she feels, and that's all new. And I think that I really wanted to stress that, but I also wanted to stress the fact that this transformation will outlast the location of simply nature. And when she goes back to the city, she even talks about that. It will be the same thing. It will be the same thing. She hopes that will carry over. It's like, you're really transformed. It will carry over no matter where you are. And so this should be long lasting. As for the daughter, she says at the end, I feel all grown up now because she by sort of being a rebellious adolescent, and by meddling in this love affair and causing the death of the young man by giving him wrong information. Because there is, I mean, you read it, so you know that that he has a car accident toward the end, and so he dies, and that she's really shaken because she indirectly causes this. So she also grows up. But the whole thing is also over the beginning of the book. You notice that the young woman, the daughter rather, is reading a book, and it's a book about a young girl whose mother had died, and she goes and spends the summer with her father, and the father finds a lover, and then the daughter meddles in the love affair and causes the death of that woman, because the woman leaves the house and also runs her car over a cliff. It's a book that was made into a well-known movie by Ada Preminger years ago, but it's a really good movie. It was a famous actress at the time, and so that's woven through, and except that the story is transposed onto into a different landscape.
Interesting. Yeah.
So it's a place of reflection, but it's not a place of going back to. It's rather a place of reflection, and actually, technically, you can have that moment of reflection anywhere, but we just don't do it. I mean, we just kind of, don't. Never take the time. We don't think about it, and when she comes face to face with herself, which we also tend not to do, but it's a moment of. It's a meditative moment. It's a reflective moment for her that leads her to see things in a different way and to connect the dots differently. But all this against the background of this, splendid, against a splendid backdrop, if you'd like.
Yeah, that's very very helpful, and that really put things in a huge bigger perspective. And I like I like the fact that you mentioned reflective, being reflective. So like how helpful have this been for your own life? Being reflective. Like has it helped you to be reflective in your own life? With some of your own everyday dilemmas.
That's very funny. So, when I go to that place, which I do once a year, I spend my summers there. When I get there, I'm so nervous when I get there because I miss all my electronics, and then after a while, because it's much slower, and after a while I say, wow, this is really nice, and then I think, wow, the next year is going to be different. I'm never going to go back to the way it was before. It's a constant struggle to not let you be completely absorbed.
Yeah.
And kind of, to the point where you just run around like in a rat race, and you never can, even if you don't have a personal crisis. But let's not forget that this woman has a personal crisis, and I think that part is really important too. So that her foundations are really, she's shaken in her foundations. And what does a woman do when she's shaken in her foundations? I mean, generally you just try to cope with it as best you can, but she's given this opportunity, so it's slightly different. But I mean, my whole life is always the way of trying to be reflective as best I can. Yeah, sure. I think we need that to look at the world, because otherwise we're just caught up in kind of a race where we just take in whatever is fed us without ever thinking about it and without really experiencing anything. Yeah.
I know. I mean, there's so much, stuff that we can absorb from the outside, and if you're not able to just reflect and then empty out, what do you do? I mean, you'll be a ticking time bomb. So
Exactly.
So you mentioned so much of like just coping and being a writer. I'm pretty sure this has been one of your ways of therapy. Is there any other things you do, besides nature, that you would recommend to others that's been very helpful for you in your own transformation?
And in my own Oh boy, that's I get a lot through reading, for example, but I also get it through viewing things, through films, through creativity. I think helps a lot. It's a very banal thing, but it's something. Yeah, it helps a lot. And just kind of to collect your own thoughts. But again, I think it helps if you go through other texts, through other. You can be inspired by a film, by a book, by a painting, by anything, by a conversation you have with a friend. I mean, as this woman gets, she's erotically drawn to the young man, and another person who interviewed me thought that I should have built that up more than I did. But the thing is that she also there's a considerable age difference, and I had that there on purpose, and I thought that the woman learns a lot from her exchange with the young man, both just factually, because it tells her things about the environment, but also just in the way he talks with her. So the art of conversation, is very important in that, and hopefully that comes across.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I mean, and I don't think there's really no rules in the way we shape well the way you have this set in a story, especially the relationship here, I- you know, it, that's I guess that's another opinion, but I don't necessarily think it needed any more building than what it has, because that's
Mm-hmm. Well,
because
that's nice to hear.
yeah, because as you mentioned, the transformation of each of the characters was definitely one of the hugest focal points here. And if we were to focus on a love story, then I think we'll take so much away from the mystical part and the spiritual part, the spirituality part of this, that of the message. So which is truly elegantly put. What just
Yeah,
about?
because
Yeah, go ahead.
it's I mean, to say it's a physical journey, but it's also a spiritual journey in at the same time. And I think the two, I try to weave the two together, and I hope that comes across, because it's it's not just landscape. It's a spiritual journey, but it's also not just a spiritual journey. It's also through landscape, so they're woven together.
Yes, exactly. All those parts go together, and I think one of the things we take away from so many you know eh, I have to say we take away from so many uh women writers, and not just making it a man and woman thing. We take it away from so many women thought leaders. Especially is the fact that they do have the ability to be have equally as much depth as man thought leaders. And I appreciate you for that. So women are leading the way in this category as well. Uh, so yeah, with that being said, we are just a few minutes away. Is there anything else you would like to just have us appreciate from just any of your work, or just maybe some words of wisdom that you would like to just pour into us?
That's words of wisdom, boy. uh, you know, I just think that No, not really. What is it to be wise? You learn every day. You never acquire that much wisdom. You get perhaps, more careful with attentive, let's say, that she becomes more, the first scene, and perhaps this will answer your question. The first scene is really that of a professional setting where she is at a cocktail party. And like many of these, and I have a lot of personal experiences with those, I think that they're, the vapidity of some of these settings, and she's aware of it, but she doesn't know how to react to it. And so perhaps, to just look for something more meaningful than just the kind of empty social life that she leads at the beginning. And, everything we do is sort of an existential search for some kind of meaning, and that can be done in different ways. And hers is kind of a search. She doesn't know yet what she's searching for, but it comes her way because she has this chance encounter, and it's a rather dramatic, since it's both a love affair, but it also is a sudden death. So it's both come together. And I think the realization of the fragility, but also the realization that of the beauty. And I think one of my last words, it's been a while since I looked at that, but yeah, I think that the end where she talks about sadness, her sadness because of the death of the young lover, but also joy because she experienced joy. And joy should be taken in a very strong sense of living, and of having and giving meaning to her existence, and that meaning is changed from the earlier setting. So if you read the text, it ends on the email that she sends to her sister, but which is also at the beginning. So it is a circle, but it's a circle which comes nonetheless. It doesn't close it; it opens it. And the woman really develops a different attitude and a more attentive, more caring attitude, a more reflective attitude that helps her cope with her life in a different way.
Profound. I really love that. So that we can take a lot from that. So that in itself is wisdom. So we appreciate your your humbleness, and just your words, and just what you're pouring into your writing, and then what you are offering to our global community. So we definitely going to continue to support you in all your efforts. And with that said, I want to just go ahead and get our program to a close here, and I'm going to have you hold the line here just briefly. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to allow you to actually tell us where we can find the book. So tell us where we can find the book.
You can find it anywhere. You can find it on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles. I had it. You can find it anywhere in a major bookstore, but you certainly can find it from Amazon very easily.
Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, the name of the book again is Cree, To Believe in the World, written by Verena Conley. Is the author that I just got done speaking with. So Cree, To Believe in the World is the book. Make sure you do pick it up. It once again available in all major distributions. Play back this podcast over and over and over again, this particular podcast episode over and over again. Share it with a friend. And when you pick up the book, make sure you tell them to pick up the book as well. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, many blessings, peace, and lots of love. I'm your host, Marcus Hart of the Transform You Live show.
You've reached the end of another episode of the Global Summit House podcast. Subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, Podbean, iHeartRadio, iTunes, or Google Play. Connect with us at globalsummithouse.com. See you on the next episode.